All right, for today's video review, we're going to be taking a look at a figure that I've been super excited about pretty much ever since we saw images of it, really ever since we got the announcement of it. But yeah, today we are taking a look at Transformers Generations Legacy Deluxe Class Tarantulas. This figure has been a long time coming. Basically in Kingdom, we got most of the season one and season one Maximals and Predacons. But a couple of the ones that were conspicuously absent were Tarantulas and Inferno, who we're obviously also getting in the Legacy line in a Voyager class, who's also coming pretty soon. But Tarantulas really felt more kind of necessary to do earlier because he's actually, one of the original characters that was there from the very beginning, whereas, Inferno came on later in the first season. But yeah, no, this is a pretty nice looking figure. And yeah, this is a really nice figure in general. He looks really good in his tarantula mode. Now, they have kind of decided to go in a different direction than they did for a lot of the other Kingdom versions of these characters, in that the Kingdom versions really strove to be super accurate to the actual real-world animals that these characters turned into, whereas Tarantulas is a little bit more kind of like halfway in between that and halfway in between his show design. Mostly, I think, just because, like, he was one of the characters whose, show model differed the most from what the actual animal looked like, in that, like, actual tarantulas are actually pretty fluffy. So they haven't really represented that here a whole lot. I mean, he does have kind of like a fur texture on the like actual, purple bits, but real tarantulas' legs are like really fluffy, and there's no sort of hair pattern on here at all. So they didn't really decide to do that, which is fine. I think it would have been cool if they at least, gave a textured pattern to it, just like the rest of the body. But I get it, because his spider mode in the show didn't have any sort of hair on it at all, at least especially on the legs. So I get why they didn't want to go in that direction, and I think that's fine. But yeah, no, he looks really nice in his spider mode. I really like the gold detailing on there. It looks super cool. In terms of articulation in this mode, really the only thing you're getting is that on each of the legs at the knee here, the leg is at a ball joint, so you can kind of move it around. You can kind of get him to be more kind of like spread out on the ground, or you can kind of prop him up on his legs. He's not quite as stable on his legs as like Black Arachnia, for example, just because the actual main bulk of the robot has a bit more mass to it, but it still works pretty well. Just not quite as like firmly solid as Black Arachnia, but I think that works pretty well. And then his little, pincers here, I guess, they can rotate around, and then there's a hinge that only faces one direction, so whichever way you rotate it, that's the way it can hinge. But yeah, I don't really need those to move, so I think that works pretty well. I love his little spider face here with the kind of, he's got a bit of like metallic paint kind of on his little mandibles there, and the eyes I think just look really nice with the green on the purple. In terms of accessories, he comes with a couple here. He comes with his crossbow weapon, which no, is not a retool or a repaint of Black Arachnia's weapon. It's a completely new mold. There was a lot of speculation for a while that he would share some parts with Black Arachnia, just because, famously, the original toys were repaints of each other, but nope, there's not a single shared part. Not even really the transformation scheme. Like, he's not even quite as close to Black Arachnia as Tigatron is to Cheetor. Like, most of the parts end up in the same place, but the transformation really is not a whole lot alike at all. And even the guns here, there are completely new parts. Like, one, his gun has a hole on the back so that it can plug into his other weapon, but also the actual crossbow bit itself is wider than Black Arachnia. So no, there was speculation for a little while that this might be the same part, but nope, completely different. It's just, obviously has a lot of very similar sculpting to it, just because they're based on the same thing. So yeah, it comes with that weapon. It's not painted at all, unfortunately, but I think it still looks good. And then he comes with a little saw blade weapon, which doesn't rotate or anything. It's just painted that way. And this is really kind of homaging the weapon that came with his original Transmetal figure, which is, kind of neat. I don't know if I necessarily needed that with this figure, but it's cool that it includes it. In terms of storage, you can store both the weapons on the spider mode, thankfully. It's not perfect, but it is something that you can do. For the crossbow weapon here, you have to do it kind of like part way through the transformation with the legs here. So you want to like just bring them up at the knees here, and then there's these two little tabs right here that will correspond to these two little hollow spots on the gun itself. So you can just peg that on like that, and then close the knees back down. It is kind of hard to actually like collapse these fully with the gun there. It is possible, but it is just a bit more annoying than it is otherwise. And honestly, it's kind of annoying even without the gun there, but either way, you can do it, and that works pretty well. It does stick out the back there a little bit, which is not perfect, but I think it works well enough. And especially since, like, if you look at the original Tarantulas toy, it also kind of had its weapon sticking out of the back there. So, you know, I don't know that I'd necessarily prefer that, but it's not unappreciated, I guess. And then for this weapon here, there's just a little handhold there, can peg into this little screw hole on the bottom. So you can just peg it in like that, and it stores nice and neat under the spider mode. So I appreciate that it has dedicated storage for both of its weapons in spider mode. Does that mean it has dedicated storage for both of its weapons in robot mode? No, of course it does not, because I don't know why they always do this, but recently a lot of figures have been designed to store their weapons really well in one mode, but not the other. And that kind of drives me nuts, especially when it's like, you know, the robot mode storage is the easier one to do, whereas the alternate mode is harder. So with a lot of the Beast Wars figures, it's a little bit perplexing that their weapons store really well in alt mode, but then just have no storage in robot mode. But whatever, that's neither here nor there. But either way, it does store nicely in this mode. In terms of size comparisons, just for the standard one, here he is with Kingdom Sideswipe, just so you can see what he looks like with a standard size deluxe car there. I don't have an original Tarantulas, but I do have a Black Arachnia from the Beast Wars line, which is the same mold. This is the cartoon colors version, so you can see what they look like together. Pretty comparable size, and here you can see what I'm saying with the weapons kind of sticking out the back there. So yeah, they look good together. Here he is with an original Beast Wars Tarantulas from the Transmetals line, and I think they look pretty cool together. Obviously, you know, two different designs here. I'd really like to get a new version of Transmetal Tarantulas at some point, just because, like, you know, I really like this figure. It definitely holds up as a toy, but in scale with some other figures, he's a little bit short in robot mode, and his hands face forward awkwardly. So it'd be really cool to eventually get a new Transmetal Tarantulas, but I'm definitely satisfied with this one for now. And then last but not least, here he is with all of our other Season 1 Predacons. We got Megatron, not really fitting on frame. We got Scorponok, Pterosaur, Waspinator, and Black Arachnia here, just so you can see what all of our, you know, Season 1 Predacons look like together. Again, just missing Inferno. Can't wait to get that figure. He looks really good, so I hope that it's a good toy. But yeah, no, they all look pretty good together. We can take a look at him in Black Arachnia in particular, since they're obviously originally the same mold from the the original toy line, and obviously not here. And I think they look pretty good together. It's nice how they're like actually making them different figures, since in the show they turn into different types of spiders, which, you know, aren't actually the same body shape at all. So I really appreciate that we can actually have Tarantulas that's shaped like an actual tarantula, and Black Arachnia that's shaped like an actual Black Widow. And I think they look really good together. And it's really cool in this mode just to see the size difference there, just like how much more massive he is than Black Arachnia. They actually, you know, he's actually not that much bigger than her in robot mode, but just the way the spider mode spreads out, I think that is a really cool comparison there. In terms of transformation, first thing you want to do is the sort of like entire leg section here is tabbed in a couple places to the main body. So you kind of want to untab it right here, and then it also has a little tab back here that you just want to make sure to loosen up. So you can bring it out to the side like that and kind of bring it up on that hinge joint there. So just do that on both sides, just like that, and then we'll just leave them like that for now. I guess we'll take off the saw blade weapon. With the knees here, like I showed off earlier, you just want to fold them out like this, and then we can take out the little crossbow. Notionally, the ports on the bottom of his feet are supposed to plug onto these little pegs that you probably can't see in there. I'm not entirely sure if that's actually happening or not, because you don't actually get to plug that in yourself. You kind of just have to like fold these under there and then compress it and hope that it actually goes into the right place. So I don't know if that's actually happening, but either way, if you get the legs in there, then it's fine. So yeah, you just want to fold them up like that and then unfold them at the knee and unfold them at the foot and just leave his legs out like that out for now. Then you want to take the tarantula head and unfold it like this over his robot mode head and then bring it down onto the back like this and then compress it up like that. You have to do that first before the next step. Otherwise, you have like real clearance issues getting the tarantula head around the actual back abdomen section here. And then you want to untab this, and it only folds up about that much. And then you want to take the entire thing and rotate it around like this so that it kind of, you get the legs out of the way, but so it goes over to the side of the tarantula head, and then you can take this and fold it up like this, and then this tab will go into this slot on the back of the tarantula head. So that's what I'm talking about. You really have to do that before doing that rotation step. Otherwise, like it's really a pain to get this bit around the tarantula head or vice versa. So you just keep that in mind. And then you want to just bring the legs down here, rotate down the arms, rotate forward the wrists here, or the lower arms, whichever. I guess they're kind of both. And then do whatever really you want with the spider legs. I tend to just leave them kind of hanging out like that, so they're mostly how they were in tarantula mode. And yeah, there you have Tarantulas in his honestly just really excellent looking robot mode. He looks spot on to how he did in season 1, and it's really, really nice to see this figure come into fruition here. There's lots of nice detail. I love the head sculpt. It's honestly just perfect for that season 1 design there. In terms of articulation, obviously the head can rotate there. It seems like it's on a ball joint, but just because of the shape of his head, it's pretty much just the rotation there. The shoulders here can swivel around like that. They can hinge out to the side here. He's got a bicep swivel both here and then also, at the lower arm here. So as a result of that, you can kind of keep this arm in line and then adjust where the actual spider legs sit. So however you want to, move that around. Also, just for transformation, he does kind of have a bit of like a backwards butterfly joint with his shoulders here, which is really nice. That can be definitely very useful for certain poses. And then, like I said, this can rotate, and then the elbow, wrist can hinge up like that. He does kind of have just like his entire lower arms are his hands, which is a little weird, but it makes sense given his, design. He's got a waist swivel here, which is nice. The hips can go forward, back about that far, out to the side. He's got a thigh swivel, that double jointed knee for transformation, which is really nice. The feet can tilt forward and back and out to the side. So yeah, really good articulation on this guy, just mostly because of how his legs fold up for transformation. He ends up with really good leg articulation. And then also just having, again, because of transformation, just that outward shoulder joint, I think can be really helpful for getting him in some dynamic poses. So yeah, pretty good. In terms of his weapons here, he can hold his crossbow weapon and he can hold his saw blade weapon either by this handle, or if you want him to hold it by this handle, you can do that too. And that looks pretty good, I think. You can also peg them together for whatever reason. I'm not really sure what purpose this serves, honestly, pegging these together, because he can still hold it by the handle of the saw blade, but then he can't bend his elbow, and then he also has a saw blade kind of sticking up against his arm. So what purpose does that serve? I'm not really sure. It's not like a storage thing for either mode, so not totally sure why those peg together, but they do. In terms of storage, if you want, you can take the crossbow weapon. I don't know if this is necessarily intended, and it's kind of a pain to do, but you can store it back where it was in tarantula mode. You just kind of have to force it under this bit here so that you can there's not a ton of clearance for this, but you can do it, so you can peg it back in where it was. And it awkwardly sits down below his legs a little bit, but I think that works well enough regardless of whether or not that was intended. And unfortunately, with the saw blade weapon, there's no way to store it at all. You might be able to just cram it in here and get it to stay in some orientation. It's probably possible, but yeah, okay, you can kind of get it to cram up in there, but it is kind of annoying that there isn't dedicated storage for that, because again, like I said, I feel like robot mode storage is the easier one of the two to engineer into the figures, since it's basically just put a tab or a slot somewhere that corresponds to the weapons. But yeah, okay, that works well enough. It rattles around in there and falls out, but I think that works well enough. I do wish the crossbow stored a little bit more elegantly, but at least there's somewhere that you can put it, which is more that you can say about some of these figures. But yeah, no, that works well enough for me. But yeah, no, lots of really nice detailing. I think one bit of detailing, I wish that he had the yellow stripes on the sculpted section on his thighs here. That really feels like it should be there. I sort of wish, again, they did that rather than, giving the saw blade weapon and painting that. But, whatever. Ultimately, I still think he looks pretty good. He does do, I don't know if you can really call it cheating. It's sort of like a remnant of cheating in that, like, okay, this section obviously does not become his spider mode like it used to, but the head in tarantula mode looks completely different than this now, because it looks more like accurate to a real tarantula rather than how it looked, in the original season 1 design. So I don't really consider it cheating. I just consider it kind of, like this dots on his head. He just kind of has some spidery details on his robot mode. So that's fine. But that is, it's a remnant of what used to be cheating, since that is where his waist ended up on the original toy there. It's raining in the background. I don't know if you can hear that, but if you hear a lot of like weird little ticking noises, that's rain, which maybe you can't, but either way, I figured I'd mention it. But yeah, in terms of size comparisons, first and foremost, here he is with the standard one with Kingdom Sideswipe here. So you can see pretty standard size Deluxe. He's maybe a little bit shorter than Sideswipe at the eyes there, but I think that works well enough. When we first started seeing images of him in robot mode, I was worried that he was going to be really short, and he's not too bad. He's maybe a tiny bit short, but I think it works relatively well. Here he is with the two different versions of the original Tarantulas here. Obviously, this is the Black Arachnia version, but here I've flipped out the Tarantula's head just so you can see what he looks like with the two of them. And we can see, the saw blade weapon here with the original transmetal saw blade weapon, just so you can see the homage that's happening there. Pretty cool. And then last but not least, here he is with the Season 1 recent guys that we've gotten for the Predacons team. And yeah, I think that this entire display works really well. Obviously, Megatron's a little bit off frame there. Again, can't wait till we get Inferno. I think that this is going to be a really nice display with all these guys together. And, some of these figures have their issues, but really, by and large, I think that they're all really kind of fantastic figures. Like, they're not all perfect, but I think it works pretty well as a display, all things considered. So I'm quite pleased with them. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. Not a whole lot else to say about this figure. He looks really good, and I'm pleased to report that, once I actually got him in hand, I'm quite taken with him in person as well. Like, I think that all of the detail looks really nice. I think that, the accessories, like, maybe it's not perfect storage for everything in both modes, but at least it's kind of doable in both modes, which is really nice. And I think that the spider mode looks fantastic. I think the robot mode looks fantastic. He's got really nice articulation, and I think he looks really good with the other figures scale wise. So yeah, I definitely recommend this figure. I think that he's up there on I've been thinking recently about, like, what my top figures of the year so far were, and I think he's probably going to make the list in some way, shape, or form, because he's a really nice figure, and I'm definitely happy to finally have him. But yeah, if you enjoy my videos, make sure to leave a like and consider subscribing. I do reviews every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. And without further ado, here we have Transformers Generations Legacy Deluxe Class Tarantulas.